I'm hoping that, you know, we can make this class like deadly successful. That's the idea, and that you'll regard it as something that, you know, depending on your participation, obviously, you'll regard it as something that's really valuable. I'm telling you the stuff I've learned that I'm telling you about. It has been so useful to me that I can't really even communicate how useful it's been. It's been unbelievably useful. And, you know, partly what I'm going to explain to you, if I can, is why, you know, there are tenets of classical morality. And there's a variety of them, and one of them is, for example, don't lie. And, you know, that's a tough one, because you might think, well, you know, why not? Really? Why not? I mean, if you can set up a situation so that you benefit from an untruth, what stops you from doing it? You know, and Dostoevsky, in one of his most famous statements, he said, if there's no God, everything is permitted. And it's a takeoff on Nietzschean thinking too, and it's a problem that he thought would be the fundamental problem of the 20th century, and I think he was absolutely right. And it's a question very much worth thinking about. It's like, why bother with things that are moral? Why do things right? Is there even such a thing as doing things right? These are great questions, you know, and hopefully what I'm going to try to do with you guys is to show you what the consequence. I've been thinking about those things for, you know, it's almost 30 years, I guess, now, and I've got a ways, certainly a ways that has been satisfying to me, and I want to tell you what I've concluded, and then you can decide for yourself if you think it's useful. And one thing I would really like encourage you to do is, like, you should be skeptical about what I'm telling you. Really, like, you should question it. Like, I don't mean the kind of skepticism that's like this, because, like, you know, I'm not here to prove myself to you at all, and you're not here to prove yourself to me either. So you have to listen and you have to attend, but by the same token, I would say, like, I'm telling you things that I have tried to hammer to death. I've tried to see if they were wrong, you know, because that's how you're supposed to test ideas. You throw out an idea and you hammer the hell out of it, see if you can see if it's wrong, not whether it's right, because that's ideological thinking. And the things I'm telling you are things I could not disprove. They seem to stand up, and I've tried multiple tests, you know, so one of them is sort of a consilience test, and a consilience is a word that was defined by Edward O. Wilson, and when an explanation is consilient, what that means is that it's coherent across multiple levels of analysis, you know, and so I've tried to test the ideas that I'm describing to you. I've tried to determine whether they're logically coherent and appropriate at the level of general psychology and clinical psychology and neuroscience and narrative theory and religious thinking, and then also to see if they're actually applicable as practical realities in day-to-day life and in social life. And as far as I'm concerned, they stand up. That's been my experience. And I've also watched people over many years now try to apply them in their own lives, and all I've been able to see so far with my graduate students and so on is that it works. So, you know, hooray for that. And so we're going to try to understand some basic issues like what the utility of truth is. And that's a really important question. It's maybe the fundamental question. Is truth useful? And if so, how and why? And, like, man, we're going to go after that, especially with regards to verbal truth, because there's something magical about words. There really is something magical about them. And the way you use words determines the course of your life, and maybe more than that, maybe the course of everyone's life. So I want to explain to you how that can be true and what it means. So, you know, that should be relatively entertaining. And hopefully what else I can tell you is I'm going to throw out some key propositions. There's probably about 7 or 8 of them, and what I'm hoping is that you'll be able to use those propositions as keys that will help you unlock things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to consciously understand. And I gave you some example of that with this little story, you know, because that little story happens to be an extraordinarily deep little story, and it's, you know, it's so old, that story. Like, I think that story stems from when we were still in trees, really, and that when our prime enemies were snakes, because it does appear, according to Lynn Isbell anyways, who's an anthropologist in California, that our primary predators 60 million years ago, when we were basically inhabiting trees, were predatory snakes, and that we co-evolved with them. And so the, like, human being versus snake motif is not only the oldest story we know from a consciously articulated perspective, but it might be the literal story of our species as a biological entity. So, you know, that, and I'm telling you that because it gives you some idea about how deep these stories can go. They can go like to the, really to the bottom of things. And if you know some of these key propositions, when you see archetypal stories portrayed in front of you, and that happens all the time. I mean, all the superhero movies that have come out lately, there's, you know, hordes of them. They're tremendously expensive to make, hey? Hundreds of millions of dollars, those things. It's like, they're all predicated on archetypal themes. You know, and I think it's of great interest to note that the most expensive artifacts that human beings produce, or at least among the most expensive artifacts that we produce, are precisely movies that are computer generated to tell archetypal stories. You know, and that's also the technological process that in large part is driving computer innovation, because the most demand that's being placed on things like computer chips is actually, you know, recreating reality, CGI reality, because it's the most complicated thing to do. So it's like, what the hell? Why are we doing that? What's up with that? Why would you spend $300 million making Iron Man? You know, there's a profit motive there, obviously, but everybody will go see it. It's like, what's up with you people? You know, you're going to see some dingbat in a metal suit fly around in the air. You know that's not true. It's like, what are you doing at those movies? You think, well, I'm entertaining myself. It's like, yeah, right, except why is it entertaining? And why is it entertaining to all of you? And why is it entertaining to everyone? You know, there's a reason for that. So partly what we're going to find out too is what it is about stories that attract our interest and why that is. And it's not merely entertainment. It's like the most potent form of learning that we have. So, well, anyway, so that's the goal. And during this as well, you know, I hope that you can articulate yourselves further and also come to some deeper understanding about the absolute essential nature of proper language use in spoken language and in written language, because you basically think and speak and write yourself into existence. And one of the things that means is you should be very, very careful with what you say, because you are literally bringing realms of reality into being through speaking, and you want to make bloody sure that the realms of reality that you're participating in bringing into being are the ones that you would actually like yourself and those you love to inhabit. So, you know, it's a... Well, I don't have much more to say about the course than that, so what I'll do now is see if you have any questions. So